This short tutorial covers installing John the Ripper on Kali Linux. John is already installed by default, but if you want to get the extra hash types or if you want to compile John specifically for your installation, you can download the latest version of John and then compile it. So John is available in a couple different versions, both of which are free. There's the regular version, which doesn't include any extras donated by developers other than the core developers. And then there's the community enhanced version. One of the community enhanced versions is the jumbo version, which contains all of the community enhancements plus the core features in one download. All of these downloads are available from the OpenWall website. For the initial 1.8 release, this is the link to that download, but check the website to make sure that a later version hasn't been released. You will want at least version 1.8, and again, look for the community enhanced versions. There are several dependencies that are needed to enable the full features of John. They're not mandatory, but the more dependencies you install, the more features you'll have available later after you compile the binary. So in general, looking at OpenSSL as an example, you'll install most of these dependencies using apt-get update and then apt-get install the name of the dependency. So for OpenSSL, as an example, Build Essential and libSSL dev are the two packages you'll need for that. And you can see on the second line that we have a whole bunch of other dependencies to help with different hash formats or enabling different features in the password cracking engine. And then for OpenMPI support, you need to install a couple more packages. And it's interesting to note for the OpenMPI that you not only have to install some dependency files, but later when you do the configure step, you'll need to also pass a switch into the configure that enables that particular feature. The rest of these features will automatically be picked up by the configure script. If you want the optional graphics card support, you'll need to download the respective packages for your graphics card. Now I'm actually installing this on VMware Fusion, and so this is not a Kali instance that's running on real hardware, and so I did not include those packages when I compiled mine. But if you're installing this into a Kali installation that's running as the primary operating system on a computer, then those graphic card features may be a lot of help to you because they can perform a lot of operations much quicker than just the CPU alone. Now, some of the dependencies have dependencies themselves. So RexGen, for example, requires CMake in order to prepare it for compilation. And CMake is available in Kali Linux. However, if you do the normal installation method, so if you do an apt-get update and then an apt-get install CMake, what will happen is the package you'll pull down from the repository is going to be the CMake 2, version 2, and you need version 3 for RexGen. So you can see on the slide here that I've emphasized that you'll need version 3 dot whatever, and so you can go out to cmake.org. One of the most recent versions is 3.11, which you can download using wget, decompile, or unzip that with tar, and then you'll go into the make directory and then do the old-fashioned installation where you do configure, make, and make install. And that'll install cmake 3.x onto your system, which then gets you ready to add RexGen. RexGen again needs to be downloaded using a method other than apt-get. So in this case, RexGen has more dependencies of Subversion, and Bison and Flex, and then you can copy the source code for RexGen from googlecode.com using the svn checkout. You'll change into the source directory, do the make dir build, and then go into the build directory, and then you can export this cmake_root environment variable using the command seen here, and then finish the compilation process for cmake. So for installation, the easiest way on Linux anyway to get the John binaries is do a wget on the URL that you found when you browsed out to the open wall and scroll down to find the URL to the Jumbo Community Enhanced version, whatever the latest is. As of this slide, it was 180. And then on Windows, you'll have to download one of the Windows installer packages because obviously Windows is not going to support the Linux methods. You'll extract the tarball using tar, and then you want to make a note of how many cores are available. And since I'm using virtual machine, I checked with VMware to see how many cores were allocated to this virtual machine guest. But if you have a real computer that you're installing this on, then write down whatever number of cores comes with that computer. So there's a couple of different methods you'll use to compile. Either one is going to start with untarring the tarball, unzipping it as well, and then changing into the John directory. So in my case, I had chosen to go ahead and install this in the opt directory. So ls, we can see the tarball downloaded, and then that was unzipped, untarred into the John folder. And then inside is the doc run and source directory. When you first unzip it, the run directory, which will eventually contain the binary, won't have it in there yet because you haven't yet compiled it. So you'll change into the source directory. And in here is going to have the source code files, the configure script, and the other files needed for compilation. So this is where if you weren't doing NPI, that you would just do a .configure, ./configure. Otherwise, do the same decompress steps seen here, change into the directory, and then do a ./configure -- enable NPI to enable the NPI support, the multiple processor support. But if you're going to use the enable NPI support, don't forget the step we talked about earlier where you install the dependencies that are needed for that. So when you're done, and this configure process can take several minutes depending on your system, you should get a chart output at the end that tells you which of the features were incorporated into your build and which are not. So in my example, I have the open MPI and the RexGen and a couple of other features that were enabled by downloading the different dependencies, but I do not have either of the GPU types supported. Now after you configure, you will want to make the project, or compile the project in other words, and the make command is going to take in the SJ switch and the number of cores that you wrote down earlier. That of course is if you're going to use that feature. Finally, the executable will be compiled into the run directory. So in our case, we would have to go change directory up one level and then cd into the run folder. And inside of this folder will be the binary that's created from the compilation process. Now again, when you do the make process, it's probably going to take even longer than a configure process. So you'll need to allow some time for the make process to complete. And there are points during that compilation process, depending on the computer, where it seems to get stuck or hung up. but typically it's not. It's usually just that it's doing the compilation, and when it gets to certain steps, it takes a while for those steps to complete. Especially true on older hardware or on virtual machines where not very much memory or CPUs is committed to the virtual machine. And once you get the binary, you can test it with the -- test switch, and it'll run through some tests that tries to figure out how fast John is going to be able to operate on this particular machine with this particular features that you've enabled. So you can move John to another directory if you prefer. One advantage to downloading and compiling your own is the configuration files and the password files and some of these other files that would be in separate folders on the default installation that comes with Kali are actually all going to be in that run folder. So it's more like a self-contained system when you download and compile from source. It makes it easy for you to take the run directory and move it around. So after you get done with the installation, you want to make a note of where some of your configuration files are. And when you download the later version and compile it custom to your build, you are not overwriting the version of John that came with Kali. They're both still there. So the system version, if we want to call the default version that comes with it, is going to have its configuration file on etc John, and the binary is going to be in user share with all the other binaries that come with Kali, but the word list will be in user shared John subfolder. The configuration file for the version that we installed, like I said, is just going to be in the run folder. So is the binary, and so is the word list. So a little bit different setup. And make a note that the John home could very well be in the environment variable pwd. So if we cancel our test and we echo out that variable, we can see if it's set. So we can see that it is set to the run directory where John is stored. So in our case, we don't even need the /run. You'll notice that the /run was actually included in the environment variable. If you refer to the path using that environment variable, then you'll be directly there. So the pwd itself already has the run appended onto the end of it. And one note about when you run it, because we didn't overwrite the default version that's installed, we actually have both versions installed, and we can flip back and forth and use either one that we want. So if you're at a command prompt and you just type in John, chances are you're actually going to be running the pre-installed version that came with Kali, because the path is going to resolve based on the path environment variable and user sbin, where this John binary is going to be included in the path. If you want to run the version that you've just compiled, you need to prefix with the /, meaning run from this directory that we're in. Now, of course, that means you need to actually be in the run directory to do it. Another way you could do it is you could specify the full path to the John binary that you want to execute, or you can even shortcut that by using the pwd environment variable that we started talking about earlier. And you can see some hints here at the bottom about running the version that you want those different ways. And if you want to run the default version, that's fine. Just type in John. But if you want to run the version you compiled, that's where you kind of have to make some adjustments. So in our case, we would just type in .john because we are already in the run directory anyway. And as you can see, because we have custom compiled with a lot of the dependencies, we have got a whole lot more hash types available to us than the native version, which has a considerable number of hash types, but still not nearly as many as we got with our custom compiled version. So hopefully this video will help you install the version that you wish and to get more features that may be useful to you.